Senator Sanders, pleased to meet you. Thank you for the interview. Thank you for your time. Did you have a nice trip from Amsterdam?
Very nice. Thank you.
Have a seat. Senator Sanders, we're going to talk about your book, of course. But first, I'd like to ask you, what's your view on the current situation in Israel and Gaza? Because you are Jewish yourself. I believe that you have also spent some time in a kibbutz in Israel as a young man. But we also know that you're very critical of Israel. So what's your view on the current situation?
I think what Hamas did was tragic. It will result in the loss of many, many thousands of lives on both sides. And I think most significantly, it will significantly set back the effort to try to bring peace to that region. Many of us have been very critical of how Israel has occupied Gaza and the disastrous conditions that exist in Gaza. Totally unacceptable. But I think what Hamas has done is going to set back our ability to try to address the crisis in Gaza and certainly to bring peace into the region. Very, very tragic situation.
Okay. Let's talk about your book. You're here in Belgium, of course, because you have a new book. It's okay to be angry about capitalism. Het is oké om kwaad te zijn op het kapitalisme in Dutch. The title sounds a little bit like a psychologist who is trying to reassure his client that it's okay to feel this anger. Is it really that difficult for Americans to talk about the negative effects of capitalism?
I think it's true not only in the United States, but around the world. We talk about many, many very serious issues. We just chatted about Israel, Gaza, terribly serious issue. But to my mind, there is one major issue impacting the entire world. And that is we have a smaller and smaller number of multi-billionaires, people of extraordinary wealth, who in recent years have become much, much richer, who have incredible economic and political power in the United States and around the world. Do we talk about that reality much? No, we don't. So what we see in my country is 3 people owning more wealth than the bottom half of American society. Worldwide, we have seen in recent years, the top 1% gain 2/3 of all the wealth being created in the world. 2/3 going to the top 1%. And in America, what we see is 60% of our people are living paycheck to paycheck. We got 600,000 people who are homeless. We got 85 million people who have no health care or are underinsured. So we are living in a world where the people on top do phenomenally well. The working class in my country and around the world is falling further and further behind. That's what uber capitalism is about. The greed of the people on top is extraordinary. We have to deal with it.
Is it a matter of greed of individuals, or is it a problem of the system? Because people tend to think, well, it's just the way the system works. There is no alternative.
No. Well, that's right. That is what the system tells us. The system tells us that it's okay that 2/3 of all new wealth go to the top 1%, and we have tens and tens of millions of people around the world who are facing starvation. That is, God didn't create that world. That is created by people who spend billions of dollars to do just what you said. There is no alternative. The only world we can live in is where billionaires get richer and you struggle to put food on the table for your kids. That's it. It's the divine right. We used to have the divine right of kings. Now we have the divine right of oligarchs and billionaires. That has got to change.
You should think that politics, it's for politics to change that, for politicians to change that. But what you're saying also very clearly in the book is that the reason why politicians are not tackling this fundamental problem is because actually they are owned by corporations. They are indebted to corporations because of the finance, the campaign finance regulations. Can you explain that a bit for European?
Yes, I can. And I don't mean to suggest that all politicians are owned, but most are. In America, and I don't know that Europeans understand this, we have what we call a campaign finance system in which if you were a billionaire and an American citizen, you could write out a check for hundreds of millions of dollars, for billions of dollars, as much as you wanted, put it into what is called a super PAC. All right, super PAC. That super PAC can spend all kinds of money to defeat me or to elect me. Okay? So you have a system where a small number of very wealthy people contribute a significant amount of the money that goes into campaigns.
No limits.
No limits at all. All right, that is the result of a Supreme Court decision a number of years ago called Citizens United. But that allows the billionaire class to a significant degree to control both political parties. And the result of all that is the working class in America, and I think working people all over the world, are wondering about who represents them. And many of them, sadly, are giving up on democracy.
You're an independent politician, but you're caucusing with the Democratic Party in Congress. But also the Democratic Party is indebted to big corporations.
Yes.
Which corporations specifically?
Well, they kind of go to Wall Street and big tech. The Republicans kind of go to the mining interests and the fossil fuel industry. So you could pick your billionaires, the billionaires. But interestingly enough, you have very large, powerful entities like the pharmaceutical industry. They really don't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat. They'll give you a lot of money, as long as you do their bidding.
So that they are sure that whoever gets elected, they will listen to what they want to be realized.
And that's not only the pharmaceutical industry. It's really amazing. You would think that there would be an ideology. I'm going to contribute to the Republicans or to the Democrats. No, they contribute to both. It doesn't matter. They will get their way no matter who wins.
We know now that in the United States there is also a big problem of people getting addicted to drugs, tranquilizers, the opiate pills.
Yes.
Many people tend to think that usually those people are poor, living in miserable conditions, and often also in Europe we tend to think that people are living in miserable conditions because they are addicted. What you are saying actually, and I found it a very interesting point in your book, is that it's the other way around. People get addicted because they are struggling.
One of the points that we make in the book that is not discussed often enough is that certainly in the United States, stress has a very important impact on people's lives. Now, I don't know how many Europeans know this, that in general, the life expectancy in the United States is below most other industrialized countries.
And it's going down.
But amazingly, despite all the new medical technology, all the new drugs that are out there, life expectancy in the United States is going down. And what is more appalling is the gap between life expectancy for the rich and for working class is at least 10 years. So if you are rich, your life expectancy will be roughly that of what other major countries are. But if you are poor, working class, you're going to die very young and often develop a number of chronic illnesses. And one of the contributing factors to that is what doctors call diseases of despair. That's a phrase, diseases of despair, is when people become hopeless. They turn to drugs, they turn to alcohol, they overeat, and even suicide goes high. And so it's a real crisis situation in America.
There is a lot of attention nowadays also for what you could call movements of activism around identity. Gender identity, LGBTQ community, race, ethnicity. There are some who say that it's blurring the class divisions actually. All those struggles about identity make people forget that there is also this big division between class, what we used to call the class war.
Yes. Well, as someone who I think has a 100% voting record on women's rights, on racial issues, when I was mayor of Burlington way back when, we supported gay rights at a time when it wasn't very fashionable to do so. So I believe very strongly in all of those issues. But at the end of the day, we have got to ask, how does it happen that the people on top have never, ever had it so good, while 60% of working people in America are living paycheck to paycheck, and many are really in terrible economic conditions. And we also have to ask not only about income and wealth inequality, but about power. Who has the power in society? Who owns the media? And in America, for example, there are 8 large media conglomerates which provide about 90% of what the American people see, hear, and read. Big money, as we mentioned, has huge impact on the political process. Those are issues that cannot be ignored.
So you agree that sometimes perhaps we forget about class divisions?
Oh, absolutely. And there is a reason for that. There is a reason. Media, for example, many of the people in the media are sympathetic to women's rights. They're sympathetic to racial issues. They're sympathetic to gay rights. But they are owned by billionaires who do not want a serious discussion about how we bring more income and wealth equality to the world, how we bring power from the billionaire class to working people. That is an issue that in the United States is virtually never, ever discussed. That's why I wrote the book.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel that President Biden has done enough so far as a president from the White House for working families in the United States?
He has done a lot, not enough, because the circumstances are such that we need bolder action. President Biden, as you may know, was the first president in American history to actually walk on a picket line with workers. That's unprecedented. And I really appreciate and support him doing that.
Is it more than a symbolic gesture? Is
No.
it important?
It says something to the people of America that we have a president who's prepared to identify himself with workers rather than large corporations. That's unprecedented. On the other hand, the economic crises that we are facing now and have faced for a long time. Let me give you one example. Today, the weekly wages for the average American worker are lower, counting for inflation, are lower than they were 50 years ago. 50 years ago. How does that happen? How does that happen? So you have many workers who are struggling, and the president has got to be bolder in taking on corporate greed. He has done some good things, but he has got to stand up and tell these large corporations who are enjoying record-breaking profits that enough is enough. The economy has got to work for all of us, not just the 1%.
President Biden will probably win the nomination again next year for next year's election. From
Yes.
your perspective, with the agenda that you are fighting for, are you happy with Joe Biden winning the nomination a second time?
Well, he is going to be he is the president. He will win the nomination. I strongly support him. What we are working on right now, as we did in 2020 when I competed for the Democratic nomination, is to do our best to make sure that the agenda that the president takes to the American people is a very strong pro-working class agenda. At the end of the 2020 campaign, the president and I sat down and we developed a number of task forces to work on issues like the economy, healthcare, education, climate change. And we came up with some pretty good results. And some of those have actually been implemented. And that's what we have to do as we go into the future. For example, many Europeans don't know this, but the United States is the only major country on earth not to guarantee health care to all people as a human right. We spend twice as much as Europeans do, and yet we have 85 million uninsured or underinsured. That's an issue the president has got to tackle. We pay the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs. That's an issue we've got to tackle. And obviously, the existential threat of climate change is an issue that the United States, China, Europe, the entire planet has got to deal with.
In 2016, Hillary Clinton lost the election probably also because many younger Democrats and more progressive Democrats didn't want to vote for her, not because she was too old, but because she was considered to be part of the old establishment. How do you make sure that Joe Biden will not be regarded by the younger Democratic voters, more progressive, more leftist voters, to be part of this establishment next year?
That's a good question, and that's kind of what we're working on. The truth is that the president has fought for and helped pass in a very difficult political climate. You know, right now the House is controlled by kind of right-wing extremists, if you like, and we have a very slim majority in the Senate. But despite all of that, he has passed some very strong progressive legislation. And our job in this campaign is not only to make sure that he gets reelected, is to give him a Senate and a House which is prepared to vote for strong working class legislation.
So you do support him
Yes, I
all
do.
the way?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.